Hey team, and welcome back to Disgustingly Easy, the podcast for women who are in it for the long game. This end of the year episode is going to be a little bit different. It's not a fitness mindset, behaviors, beliefs, or a nutritional strategy episode. This is a story episode because I sat down recently and I started writing an email series that spoke to my year running the long game. And whilst I've been in business for myself for nearly a decade, this was the first year that I really experienced the success and the momentum that I have been striving for, the kind that feels predictable, reliable, the kind that makes enough money that you don't need the backup job. And for us, the kind that led me into stepping into the breadwinner role for my family. So if you're a budding business owner, maybe you're someone with an idea that lurks at the back of your mind. Maybe you simply daydream about something outside of the 9 to 5, or just love hearing stories about women experiencing success and talking about what it really takes. I wanted to put together a blow by blow because 2025 was the year that I realized not only what it takes, but all the ways I'd been limiting myself, the things I'd wasted time on, things I'd wasted money on, and what it looks like to build a life and a business that you love without sacrificing your integrity, without losing your mind, like not completely. I wanted to tell you what 2025 actually looked like for me. The sweaty tear-stained moments, the high five holy shit moments, and how it all came together in quite an unexpected way. Because 2025 was the year that I chose one thing for 1 year. And I got to tell you, it really fucking paid off. So, as many of you know, I qualified as a personal trainer back in 2016 after burning out as a social worker. But when COVID shut all the gyms and I moved into my motherhood season, I actually hadn't really thought about returning. So my businesses were focused on life coaching, NLP, running women's circles, teaching about trauma-informed facilitation, and coming up with random ad hoc offers. But in 2024, when I was feeling quite lost in my journey, I didn't really know what my purpose was. My good friend Rach, who many of you know as Rachel Rose, asked for some help with her health and fitness plan. She was feeling a bit frustrated with where she was at. And after a few WhatsApp messages back and forth, she was like, mate, why aren't you doing this as a job? I was going through a pretty big burnout at the time. We had just sold our home in Belgrave and moved back into Melbourne. Otis was not handling that transition well. I'd been diagnosed autistic a few months prior, and I was going through a skill regression and persistent heart palpitations that had landed me in hospital over and over again. Parenting was overwhelming. We had no childcare, no support with Odie. He was 2.5 and had never had a babysitter or been in any care but ours. And I had only just weaned after 2.5 years of breastfeeding non-stop. We co-slept, and my reality was just one of pure exhaustion day in, day out. And yet, providing this kind of support to Rach, the knowledge regarding health, fitness, calories, macros, workout styles, how to approach things was just innate. I didn't need to think about it. It was easy. I'd managed to lose the 30 kilos I'd gained after 2 years postpartum. And whilst it was hard, at least my body and my relationship with it was starting to make sense again. So I'd also healed a chronic pain issue that I'd been having that had nearly seen me undergoing ultrasounds and possibly surgery on my lower back. So a few weeks in, Rach started paying me $50 a week to support her. And then off her own bat, she upped it to $75 a week, which is actually more than I initially charged for the long game. Everyone watched online as she shared her journey, taking back control over her health. She started run shuffling, losing like 20 kilos or so. And every time she spoke about me and what we were doing together, I got an influx of new followers, inquiries, people asking me, could I help them too? I was still feeling pretty useless most of the time. I'd been struggling with my own mental health, my role as a primary caregiver, but I'd had a new casual job at a small group fitness studio and it was giving me life. So I leaned into the idea. I tested the water with a few Instagram stories and started to ask questions. I could see the breadcrumbs leading me to believe that this maybe could just work. I'd actually done a business coaching program with a coach named Rebecca back in 2021, and I loved the model she used. It was called 6 Figure Women, and the way it was set up was just really stupidly simple, scalable, and based off her experience running a coaching business with 3 kids under 3. She had a 12-week minimum term, weekly calls, no one-to-one, an onboarding course, and she had delivered it all via a Facebook group. Did a little stalk, found she had a podcast, and I listened to every single episode in my only free time, which was when I was working out at the gym. And in one episode, I still remember when I listened to it. I still remember exactly what I was doing. She described the structure she used to create $1 million year. And one line from that episode lodged itself in my brain. She said, if you want success, you need to do one thing for 1 year. No distractions, no chopping and changing, one thing. I'll share the episode in the show notes if you want to have a listen. It wasn't a sexy idea. It wasn't viral. It wasn't the super fast road, but something about the way I'd been working on my own fitness felt really familiar. Over the last 18 months, I'd been learning and relearning that we don't get results chasing the quick fix. My history with exercise and fitness programs, despite being a PT, had always been the hard and fast approach. Nothing was ever good enough or hard enough. And I was always so overly critical about what I perceived to be a lack of results. And it hit me that I was exactly the same in business. And here I realized that the thing that had been missing from my approach over the last 10 years was recognizing that I needed to be able to start with the slow, steady, sustainable. And what I thought was slow and steady, sustainable absolutely was not. I'd never stuck at anything long enough to build a foundation. I chopped and changed from offer to idea to idea. I never repeated a program. And if I launched something and it didn't go well, I would bury myself under a rock and not come out for 6 months. I was always telling myself, I didn't make enough money. I don't have enough clients. I was never enough. So with this idea of just one thing in mind, I hyper-focused, of course, in one night, created a Facebook group, began planning the onboarding course, the workouts, the call structure, the pricing, and in November of 2024, launched the first ever version of the long game with a plan to start in 2025. Mind you, we still had no childcare, no babysitting. Nathan worked full-time, and I did everything in the moments in between. However, I could see the vision. We started on the 5th of January with just 11 women, which even looking back now, that is incredible for a first round. And I even sold 2 spots to round 2, which was starting in April. And the idea of selling something that I had to commit to 3 months down the track gave me such a huge sense of internal panic. But regardless, in January, I locked in. I was like, I am doing this one thing for 1 year, no matter how many other ideas I have, no matter what happens in my life. One thing for 1 year and just see what happens. And of course, Murphy's Law always suggests life tested me immediately. It was like it had its own little list of personal challenges that I would have to overcome if I really wanted this the way I said I wanted it. Firstly, Odie started kinder. And if you've ever done that transition, you know it's not just drop them off and go and get a coffee, especially when they're a neurodivergent kid, especially when they have never been cared for by anyone outside of me and my husband. It wasn't an initiation, it was an annihilation. The morning before, the long game calls were filled with screams that he didn't want to go, wiping my tears away as I turned on my Zoom camera, trying to stay present. And all I could do was worry about how he was going. He was only going 1 to 2 hours at a time, 3 days a week. And outside of kinder, he clinged to me like I was his own personal oxygen tank. In round 1, I alternated between morning and evening calls because I wanted to be really accessible. And it was in that first round that I realized I could not be present for the PM calls. Not to mention, whilst people said they needed them, with a demographic made up of mainly mums, it was way too easy for the challengers to present themselves, and I would end up with only 1 or 2 on the calls or not at all. So I made the decision early on that in the next round, calls would only be when I could safely and with confidence present the best fucking session. And then the emphasis wouldn't be on being there and watching it, but it would be on watching it regardless. The second thing that came up, I realized very quickly on that the app I'd chosen to house our programs and our workouts sucked. If you are listening and you were in long game round 1, I am so sorry. Week 6 of round 1, I made the snap decision to migrate everyone over to Everfit, which is the premier programming and fitness coach app. It was a hard decision because it was the most expensive decision, but I could see how everyone's experience was compromised. And I knew that if I wanted people to stick around, it had to be better. It was scary. And a lot of people told me I shouldn't do it mid-round. However, Everfit immediately relegated our Facebook group unnecessary, which was great because a lot of people didn't want to be on Meta. And I could do everything in the app. If I could have my time again, I would have just paid for the more expensive app and had a vision in mind of where I wanted the business to go rather than thinking that I would change at some point down the road, especially when it dictated such a huge percentage of the user experience. The third thing that happened was I got a really serious ear infection and ended up in hospital, which was a neurodivergent nightmare. So in January alone, I had a brand new program, a melting down kid, a newly diagnosed husband. I was overstimulated, touched out, and then hospitalized multiple times over a 2-week period on endone, on Panadine Fort, and not having a very nice time. Thankfully, that resolved. And when February hit, I was still doing 4:30 a.m. starts at the gym that I worked at. Long Game was bringing in about $500 a week, but I had invested $6,000 in mentoring with a fitness coaching company. So technically I was still operating in a deficit, and it was around this time that my personal life started to feel really heavy. It's not something I've spoken about publicly, obviously, but after a few months of little contact, my bestie, ride or die, love of my life, stopped talking to me. It was brutal, and I still feel really emotional talking about it. And it is as yet unresolved. I cried constantly. I couldn't focus. I didn't feel functional. I know I put my best face forward on socials, but for those who are on my close friend stories, they saw me cry a lot. A lot. Even just thinking about it now, I start to feel a bit teary. Thank God for community, for the women's circle that I was in, for being held. This is the main reason I started Bec Therapy. And I go to equine therapy with my incredible therapist, Naomi Rossthorn, up in Mount Evelyn with Harnessing Wellness every single month, no matter what. And my advice is if you want a business and you're neurodivergent or you have a mental health situation that is fluctuating, get a therapist stat. They are not just there for the acute panic moments. Therapy is a steadying force in my life and one that I am eternally grateful for. So when March came, I felt an energy shift. I was feeling so strong in my own training. I was feeling more and more confident in my approach with the long game, and I was getting great feedback. My dear friend Liv Calder flew down and we did our first branding shoot for the long game with volunteers and actual members. And the pictures were just everything I ever wanted to represent the long game. Everything felt like it was going on the right track. I was feeling a real security in my body. I had peace and self-trust. And I could feel the old niggling weight anxiety and body anxiety starting to feel further and further from me. And I thought, this is the feeling I want every woman to have access to. This was the beginning of the long game ethos. So I started to realize that I wanted it to be less focus on the workouts and the food, and I wanted women to have an identity shift. In April, we launched round 2 of the long game and sold out with 15 members. And my brain was exploding with potential for this program. On the one hand, I couldn't believe that it was really working. But on the other hand, I was starting to notice how when you focus on one thing, it means you can tweak, refine, deliver, tweak, refine, deliver. I celebrated $12,000 in sales for the quarter and genuinely felt like I'd won the goddamn hot girl in business Olympics. It was the biggest launch I'd ever had. And that number might sound small to some people. And to be honest, old me would have told herself that 12K was not enough. But for the me who was focused on doing this one thing, it was proof of concept. This isn't just a cute idea. This could really work. $12,000 over 12 weeks was $1,000 a week in revenue. And obviously remembering revenue is not income, my expenses have always sat around $500 a week. So I apprehensively quit my $80 a week gym job, even though I was still terrified that all of this might somehow suddenly fall away. And here's the part that's hard to explain unless you've lived it, but I'll do my best. The growth in my business mirrored my fitness experience in real time. The more grounded my body was in my workouts, my fitness, the more grounded I felt in my business. The more I strengthened my body, the more I could hold in my business. The more I practiced not spiraling around what the scale said or what my body looked like that week, the more perspective I had with money, numbers, launching, decisions, less reactivity, more leadership, less panic, more planning, less prove it now and more build it properly. It made me wonder how, if I had been working on my body in the same way all those years ago, if I would have experienced more success in my business from the start. Important to note that I was still only working in the 15 hours that Kinder allowed, with the occasional 4 to 5 a.m. here and there. And my heart was still breaking from my friend not speaking to me. And despite all the success, April was probably my worst mental health month of the entire year. I cried a lot. I slept a lot. I went to therapy. April was also the month that I returned to karate for the first time postpartum. And for those who have somehow missed it on my socials, I've been doing karate for nearly 30 years. I went to karate camp over Easter for the first time in 20 years. And it really reminded me of who the hell I am when I'm in my body, not just surviving, but like training, leading, a sense of belonging. And again, it wasn't just physical, it was emotional. It was nervous system led, because the stronger I got, the more I could withstand, not just in my legs and my lungs, but in my mindset, my resolve, my belief, and my understanding of how to do what it takes. So the month of May came and I did what a lot of small business owners do when things are starting to go well. I added more. I know, I strayed. 5 months in, I completely compromised on my original plan of just do one thing. And I took on 5 one-to-one clients. I made an excuse in my head as to how I'd stuck to the plan for long enough and now it needed to scale, which is, in hindsight, not unlike clients who tell me that they've done a whole 4 weeks of maintenance and now can they please do a deficit. I mean, I don't need to tell you how much I adore my one-to-one clients, but I realized very quickly that one-to-one is not where I do my best work long term. The proximity is too much, the responsibility, the intensity, it was a lot. The offer was, in hindsight, very anxiety led. And this alone shows me that it was not the right time to be offering this. I said it was because I needed them to lock in. In reality, it was because I was afraid of losing the income if they left. I can see underneath this was just fear. What if they leave? What if I start and I'm not good enough? So whilst I realized really quickly that it wasn't what I wanted to be doing, I had to see it out for almost the rest of the year. This taught me that when you make decisions from fear, you will pay for it later. When you make decisions from steadiness, you build something you can actually sustain. However, it was in close proximity with these new one-to-one clients that I was really able to dial in my messaging even further. I wanted neurodivergent women, strength training, anti-diet culture, anti-patriarchy as a framework. And it was identity-led change. This was not a weight loss program. This was not a fitness program. This was a coaching container for women who are just done abandoning themselves. June and July were chaos because toddlers obviously don't care about your business model. And Odie was sick constantly. We had our first family gastro, and if you know, you know. And my business pretty much had to exist within the tiny pockets of time that all of that allowed. So 4 a.m., 10 p.m., 3 p.m. on a Sunday. And in July, the Long Game Round 3 launched. And this time we had 22 women. And when I went back and I looked over my financials after the launch, I realized that we had done 53,000 in sales for the calendar year. So when we're talking sales versus cash, sales is projected income that will come in over time. Cash is what comes into your bank. And we'd hit 53,000 in sales for 2025. We finally had a home workout program to go alongside the gym program, and the engagement was wild. So whilst the first 2 rounds, there was a lot of me in the forums giving feedback, talking, amping everyone up, asking a lot of questions, and often met with crickets. Now, women were supporting each other. They were showing up, results were happening, community was forming. July was also when I locked in the branded merch that I want, and the Long Game hoodie was born. I re-recorded all the onboarding materials in a professional studio, and I finally took the leap and booked the retreat. that I had been thinking about for the last 10 years. I started to see everything so clearly. So when I stayed focused on the one thing as originally intended, it flourished. But when I got distracted by extra offers, it stretched me way too thin, which is not unlike our health journey. It's the boring things done consistently that are the ones that get results. A few months earlier, I'd also tried to bring in a low tier offer, which was called Launchpad. Love to everyone who signed up for that, but it was a bust. Hardly anyone used it. Shout out to Rosie, who was our one consistent member. People would sign up and then completely ghost as it had no accountability. It was just the programs. Several different mentors told me, just keep the cash. It's their responsibility to cancel. And every week, this $25 would drop in and it didn't feel right in my body. And I realized more offers doesn't automatically mean more money or more freedom. It just means more complexity. So I made the decision to drop the one-to-ones once everyone's contract expired and end the low tier offer. Long game was going to be it. It was going to be the one thing that I'd always intended. And what I was realizing was I actually wanted women to sign up for a whole year. The fitness business mentor that I had really questioned whether this would work. She was skeptical, but she also had no idea about neurodivergent or motherhood demographics. And the client and customer behaviors that she spoke about absolutely did not relate to me at all. So there was a lot of friction in that relationship, but I dug in and I maintained, I was like, this is what my community really needs. I wanted this to be a place where women learnt to build strength, boundaries, self-respect, a place where they gave themselves the time and the space to do it right. I wanted them to stop putting diet culture timelines on themselves over the 12-week minimum term. And I needed enough time to connect with them over the cultural conditioning to show them what their bodies were capable of. I needed them to have time to stuff it up, to freak out, to feel shame, to ghost, to come back, and then realize that the most important thing is that you just keep returning to yourself over and over again. It takes time to teach people that consistency is not doing everything perfectly every day. It's coming back after you've fallen off. It's restarting. Consistency is when you keep going despite the mistakes, not when you stop making them. And I'm going to say that again, just in case you need to hear it. Consistency is when you keep going despite the mistakes, not when you stop making them. So in August, I launched the retreat and no one bought any tickets initially. Not in the early bird, not in the first few weeks, despite the groundswell of support, the kind words, the encouragement, etc. This did not translate to sales at all. I tried really hard to not let it affect me and keep promoting, smiling through the anxiety, whilst all the while wondering, what the fuck am I going to do? And the further I got into launch, the louder the crickets seemed to be. And honestly, the whole thing felt like a massive flop. So in this month, I also pitched myself to a bunch of big podcasts. We're talking It's a Lot Pod, Kick Pod, and I put hours and hours into these pitches. I got help and support to reach out to producers and to the companies that hosted the podcasts. I rehearsed my elevator pitch in the shower. I went to bed at night, seeing myself on the couch riffing with Abby Chatfield, and I could see myself there. I felt a deep call to share my journey. I thought about it so much. I visualized it so much, and I breathed so much life into this next stage. I emailed something like 20 different shows and I got 0 replies. 0. Alas, in the middle of what felt like a bit of a mess of a month, I also had my first ever night away from Otis, staying in Melbourne CBD for a content event with Socially Sands, which was only, there's a whole 5K from home. But here, with the presence of mind that uninterrupted time allows, I had some really big revelations about myself, about the business, and the things that needed to change in order to grow. And whilst I was away, I did a little stalk of the coach and the mentor that had sparked the idea of the one thing for 1 year, Rebecca Hill. And I thought, there is no way that I'm going to go through with this. But while I sat at the hotel bar with my $42 worth of oysters and, to be honest, a pretty average margarita, I applied for a one-on-one mentorship with her to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. When I got home, I even made a slideshow for Nathan about how I was going to invest our savings in coaching with Rebecca and how I was going to pay it back. He freaked the fuck out, which is fair. And we had a big argument about our joint finances. And then we didn't talk to each other for a long time. And then we chose it together. He could see that long game was working. He could see how the one thing could be the thing. And he could see me in all of this being the person to make it happen. So I fired the fitness business mentor who repeatedly criticized my vision of the 1 year long game program. I let go of the VA I had at the time, who was doing a really shit job. I did both in the space of 24 hours, things that I'd been procrastinating because I realized if I was going to be the woman to invest in my business to this level, she does not suffer mediocrity, nor does she allow for misalignment of values or staying quiet about work that has not been done to the appropriate level. And that decision changed everything. That month, I invested $44,000 from our personal savings in a one-on-one high-level business mentorship paid in full. And you need to know that backing myself at that level did not feel good. It wasn't magically aligned and on purpose, rainbows, butterflies, and cash coming out my butt. And the next day when I woke up, I realized I didn't feel different. And I'd actually been telling myself that the woman who does this, the woman who invests at this level, she gets up and works out at 5 a.m. And when I didn't just do it, something shifted inside of me. And I realized that I'm the woman who needs to make it and everything that I ever want again happen. I need to be her, become her. And it felt so fucking uncomfortable to hone in and see the level of responsibility that I had been avoiding. Over the next few weeks, I leaned right in. I ordered 10 long game hoodies, hoping that maybe when I finally got the courage to speak about the long game yearly version that I wanted to create, that maybe 10 women would join. I got membership packs together with beautiful handmade things, bespoke creations, Loco Love chocolates. I kept planning the retreat because I'd already paid for the venue, even though I had no fucking idea how I was going to actually pull it off. And I rustled up the courage to go for another night away, because anxiety be damned, and went up to the Gold Coast to meet with Rebecca and have a 24-hour business immersion. And whilst I was there, the sales just started coming through. So in September, in the third week of September, I made my previous financial year total revenue, which was $35,000 in cash. So when someone signs up on a payment plan, there's projected sales to the tune of around $3,000. But that week, I made $35,000 cash in the bank and did something like $60,000 in sales over 2 weeks. And again, fuck, I wish I could tell you that it felt like champagne and confidence, but it didn't, because my nervous system felt like it short-circuited. Behind the scenes of all of this, I'd pitched the current long gamers, round 3 long gamers, that they could join me for the year on a payment plan, or they could pay in full to get bonus one-on-one time with me. 10 people paid in full that week, and another 10 joined on payment plans in the next 2 weeks. Every time another member came through, especially the paid in fulls, I would stare. I would find myself staring at the wall. My brain just couldn't integrate what was happening. I would even feel myself starting to dissociate, like I was leaving my body. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't back it in my mind. Each new member was worth around $3,000, and I had 20 of them in 2 weeks. I think when you've spent so many years doubting yourself, years running a barely there business, years of peaks and troughs and starts and stops and changing your mind every 5 seconds about what you're doing, years feeling like you just didn't get it right, even good things can feel dangerous to your nervous system. And I was so afraid that I would stuff it up, or somehow again it would all fall away. Smack bang in the middle of that month, Nathan hit full burnout. and stopped working. And I'm talking breakdowns, panic attacks, full system shutdown, zero executive functioning, zero capacity to solo parent. And again, we still had no support, no babysitting, no extra hands. All we had was the 15 hours of kinder, and September was brutal. I was scared for him. I was so stretched. Otis went through some intense parental preference due to him being so unwell, and I was just holding way too much. I didn't get much sleep that month. My PMDD symptoms flared in a really big way, and pretty much every person close to me got a teary 10-minute voice note. They're like, oh my God, what if I can't do this kind of voice note? And still, the long game kept growing. Women kept showing up. Women kept joining. The community kept flourishing. They would tell their friends would join. And I was waking up for the first time in my business owner life with multiple inquiries. I felt so committed to my one thing, and I was definitely thanking my earlier self for ditching the other two programs. I dug in that month with my own training, using it to anchor me in the season of such big waves. We brought on our first two ambassadors. Side note, Charlotte and Ruby, I fucking love you. And we ran our first social media challenge, giving out $1,000 plus in prizes. September was huge. And we also finally finalized the retreat. And I made the decision to actually include it in the membership, use it as a conversion tool, and the pressure to sell out disappeared. When the time came to retreat, we had 12 women decide to come along, and it was magic. Just another layer of proof. And it was everything I hoped it'd be. Honestly, I still cry reading the feedback. And with the retreat, I did another whole 2 nights away from Otis. So sitting here recording this on Tuesday, it's the 23rd of December. This is where we're at. The long game is sitting with 30 incredible members, and the business itself is climbing towards $150,000 in sales this calendar year and $75,000 in cash. I work around 15 hours most weeks. However, with the holidays and no kinder until the 12th of Jan, it's probably going to be less. I have a VA who supports me so well. I go to karate weekly. We just bought a house in the country and we're set to move in March 2026. Nathan is not working for the time being and has the time and the space to heal. I have replaced his income with my own and actually have a disposable income for the first time in nearly a decade. The podcast is going gangbusters, and I know that some of you guys are listening to episodes on repeat. Our next retreat is locked in and paid in full for April the 18th and the 19th, and my own training has leveled up now that I'm back investing in a strength coach, and I've got 105 kilo deadlift PB, 90 kilo squat. I've hit 5 pull-ups. The goal is 10. Because as a business owner, I do not compromise on my training ever. It is a part of my work, and I'm realizing that this is not just because it's become a content piece or I need to maintain my physical strength and appearance, but because the stronger I get and the more doggedly I adhere to my training, the more that approach and that ethos maps across to my business. For me, this was the missing piece of the puzzle when it comes to making my business work. When I cut corners in my health, I was someone who cut corners in my business. When my mindset was weaker around my fitness and my dedication to my health, elements of that bled into my business because how we do one thing is how we do everything. And I know there is so much more that I could expand on. Every single month could be a podcast in and of itself. And I'm sure you have questions. I would love your feedback in the forum about what parts of this story you want more information on or a solo episode on. Let me know and I can dive right in. For now, I have such a clear vision of how and where the business is going to evolve over the next 2 years. And when I think about the version of me at the end of 2024, burnt out, unsure, questioning everything, I just come back to what Rachel Rose said to me. You know, this work that we're doing together, this could be your thing. And she was right. So a big public copy thank you to my good friend Rach for all of her support and encouragement, for the sparks that have led to the fire that we now call long game. I'm so glad I did the one thing for 1 year, mostly. with perhaps just a few little deviations. So with all that in mind, what I want you to know, especially if you're thinking, oh, it must be nice, or that's not possible for me, that's what I thought too. Your trauma doesn't disqualify you. Your neurodivergence doesn't disqualify you. Your motherhood doesn't disqualify you. Your messy life doesn't disqualify you. You can build a strong body. You can build a steady mind. And you can build a life that you actually want. And it's okay to do that alongside therapy, tears, chaos, sickness, and a life that feels like it's constantly coming together and falling apart. Everything in fitness, in business, in life changes when you realize that the slow road is the shortcut. 2025 was wild. 2026 is going to be something else. And I cannot wait for you to join me on the journey. Remember, when nothing is certain, anything is possible. I truly believe this. Here's to an incredible 2026. You've got this, and I've got you.